taught at Mayo before it was Grant, the old Grant building.
Okay.
And then when we're in the swing site over on the boulevard.
Yeah.
So, and then I went away and I came back.
But I think the other thing that we were trying to, and I mean, you know already, but, you know, talk to parents about how everyday experiences are like field trips too, and not to miss the opportunity about talking to your child, whether it's, you know, going to the post office, whether it's going to the grocery store, you know, a trip to the dentist, a trip to the, you know, get your hair braided. I mean, there's so much language in all of those experiences to make sure that people aren't just passing off their phone to, you know, engage the children instead.
And Mary made a great point of the idea of
Hi.
Hi.
I just was checking on what was early childhood.
Yes, we're here.
All right.
Promoting oral language
I'm very good at that because I never stop talking.
and play and symbolic representation and all of those precursors for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mary was talking about talking things through, like even when you're cooking in the kitchen, I need to get the rice out of the cabinet because they need to hear the oral language and they need to hear your thought process. We were discussing with the parents whose kids were learning to read. When you start to read, you start reading orally. You're saying the words outside, you know, out loud, and that's partially because you need to hear them again. So by saying it, you hear it. And like I'll even say to my own sons when they're writing, and I know it's not good.
I do that. Sometimes in order for me to understand something, if I'm sitting here in the lunch break room, I have to read it out loud sometimes.
Yeah,
People
I
think I'm
same
talking
way.
to myself, but I have to read it out loud sometimes in order for me to hear me saying it to understand what it is.
But that's
that I'm reading.
but that's a good strategy. That's a good reading strategy, and you've learned that about yourself. And you know, we all learn differently.
And sometimes sharing that even with your students or your own kids, this is what I have to do to understand it, because sometimes, and for me, the same thing, like I could read the same passage, especially coursework, like 5 times, and until I read it out loud to myself or whatever is confusing
You
me,
don't understand.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe there's that whole oral language, see it, say it, you know, with see it, say it, do it kind of thing that you need to do. Not everybody, obviously, but I think there's more people who need it than we realize.
Yeah.
And I think the way instruction has moved, we're doing it less.
Right.
Sometimes
And
we're
it's
having
gonna hurt
less.
people.
That's why we have some of our issues, which include going back to behavior issues because we have frustration.
And I always, I mean, this comes out of coursework, but it was just one of those phrases that always stuck with me. Oral language is the written rehearsal for writing.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, to me it was always, does it sound right? Even when I write something, I reread it, I read it out loud,
Well, we
you
did a
listen to
presentation
the
together doing it. We're like,
flow.
she's reading and saying it out loud. I'm like, is that right? I'm like, I don't know. And then I was just correcting something. I'm like, is it are? Is it is? Or is the whole sentence structure wrong based on how it sounds?
But like sometimes you could write a word and you haven't written that word or you haven't
yeah.
seen it in so long and you're like,
It looks
this is
funny,
so
yeah.
then you look it up and you're like, okay, let me write it in here and see, and then you're like, well, it's spelled right, but for some reason it just
Yeah.
writing it on
Happens
the
all the
paper
time.
is
Yeah.
like it doesn't seem. It looks like it's spelled wrong.
Yeah.
That feels like it happens more as I get older. It does, though. Is it? Yeah. And I'm like, should I have 2 L's in there?
Uh-huh,
Or
yeah.
or is there another A? Yeah, I agree completely. So well, you're familiar with the L's, and so what I was going to have parents do is take some materials and play with them and come up with things that kids could use, how they could use these materials to play like in a hospital, what you can make with the materials. And then I was going to have them look at some, I had copied some of the L's, like one from each area, and look really for the parents about what skills are being utilized. Like if it's in cognition, you know, the ability to manipulate materials and communicate about the impact. So the whole idea of, in blocks, why the block tower fell over. So to be able to start verbalizing that. You know all that already. And then, so what they're working through, they really want parents to understand that play is academic. And a lot of times it gets a bad rap with uninformed people. And as we said to the other parents before, we're gonna ask that you become like a disciple of play in terms of like when you hear people discuss it and that they're saying, oh, that's just play. It's not just play. It's kids' work. It's kids' learning that's going on. And we have kids who are frustrated in kindergarten and first grade. And this is my own personal opinion, but it's backed up by research too. A lot of it has to do is because they're disengaged in the classroom. They're not engaged. They don't want to come to school because it's not fun.
And kids say, we don't get playtime anymore.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
kids
It's like-
verbalize
it's like
that
2-year-old.
very, very young.
She copies everything everybody in the house do to the point where, even before she turned 2, like, she was always so interested in the potty. Like, she would say, oh, I gotta go, even though she wouldn't do anything. But it was so easy to potty train her because even before she even actually started like peeing and pooping in the potty, every time she asked me or like every time she went in the bathroom with me, she wanted to sit. So she knew the whole concept of once I'm done peeing, I get tissue, I wipe myself, I flush the toilet, I make sure I pull my stuff up to wash my hands. So she just turned 2 months ago and she's potty trained already.
That was my Owen. So, and do you have older siblings?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I have a 19, 15, and a 6-year-old.
Because, so I have a 17-year-old and a 14, and Owen is the younger one. And I remember it was New Year's Day. He just came in to me, and he was probably just 2. And he said to me, I want big boy pants like Ronan. And that was it. He was done. He knew what to do. A couple accidents, but it was like, it was a choice that was made, and he was good with it. And I think it is a lot to do with seeing the routine, following it along.
And then,
it suddenly clicks.
And then, like, not only that, like, she has 3 other 2-year-olds in her classroom. So once the teachers was like, listen, let all the parents of the 4 kids know, the 4 2-year-olds, listen, we're good, because at LULAC, we're mixed ages. So we have some ones, some babies. So there's 4 2-year-olds. So all 4 of them
Do it together.
So now all 4 of the 2-year-olds in her classroom
That's
are,
awesome.
they all potty train at the same time. So now they're all potty trained because the teacher consistently did it. The parents, we worked together
That's nice.
at home and at school. So it was like, it took like a week or 2 and they all were,
That's great.
so now they're
communication.
all potty trained.
Are they all
yeah.
girls or is it boys and girls?
Was 2 girls and 2 boys.
Wow, that's
Boys can be
awesome.
harder.
Yeah.
It's 2 girls and 2 boys. I mean, one of the little boys had a little bit more accidents than the rest of the kids, but I mean, I know that boys is harder than girls anyway, but like.
My Ronan was
She does
3 and a
good.
half.
Really?
He but everything else, well, he'd have
Yeah,
accidents,
yeah.
He's
I mean,
wrong
she
before.
still has her days with the pooping part too.
Yeah, that's hard.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, it's still, cause it's only been like a couple weeks, but, I mean, I think it's like 2 months after she turns 2 years old and she's already potty trained. It's like,
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
you know?
And it's a lot less.
So, yes, by the time she go to preschool, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. No, she'll be a prep.
So we're talking about, and we covered all about the idea that play develops speech and language skills, and the whole idea of what Mary was talking about, like the narration of what they're doing and allowing them to narrate what they're doing. It's really important. We had been talking before too about when you read, but you know this, reading the same story multiple times, because once they start to catch your mistakes, you know that they're making strides towards reading independently because they're memorizing and making connections between text and language.
I mean, I just think it's amazing though too. Like, sometimes I just sit on the floor and just watch my kids play. Like we have like a little plastic like hammer and wrench and stuff, and like what some of the kids do, they'll like take like the doll stroller and they'll like tip it upside down and then they like And I'm like, oh, you fixing the wheel? And they're like, yeah, like, it's so amazing how you see that they know this play hammer or this play wrench is what it's used, and they're actually putting it,
Connections are
using
making
it for what it's used for, and they're like 1 or 2 years old, and you'd be just like so amazed. Like I have this one little girl, I believe her mom is always, like, she takes like a little square block, because to her, you know, most
Oh, the
people's
cell
phones
phone.
are like
Yes.
this, so she's always like this, hello,
But
what the
that's
That
like
used to
the
be in my
same,
classroom
the
all
same
the
old
time.
rectangle
Yeah.
block, and then she's got the phone, and
Just
she's
take
like,
pictures. Oh.
and she's like this, and she's like, I'm like, oh, you texting? Who you texting? And then she takes the phone, and she's like, oh, you taking
My
selfies
girls
like
used to do
this?
that.
So it's so amazing how, but they're using like
Correctly.
materials in the,
Yeah.
like a block or something in
Yeah,
the
and
classroom.
that's very important.
you know, and it's just, it's so funny to me, like to see them actually, you know what I mean?
My sister used to sing into her hairbrush.
Uh-huh.
You know, that was her microphone.
Mm-hmm.
See, and this is what makes me sad, too, because all that excitement, all that creativity, all that openness to learning, and then we get them to 2nd grade, and they're kind of like, I'm done, I'm tapping out already,
Yeah.
and they still have 10 more years, 10 more grades to go through. And we really need to start reflecting on what we're doing, because they are sponges, and they're so open to learning, and they're so excited
And
to
it's
learn.
like, it doesn't
It's
even
supposed
have
to
to
be
be
fun,
Like, it
right?
doesn't have to actually be like a real telephone that I'm
Yes.
actually using to talk. Like, I'm
Right.
gonna use whatever it is
Mhm.
Props. One of the things we did in New Britain, so we have a transition to K, I call it Kindergarten Cafe, and I would go around to community providers and talk about kindergarten in New Britain. And I had them make a video, and we went to one of our schools, and we videotaped the kids' reflections, the K kids, on kindergarten.
Mhm.
And so, like, what did you like best about kindergarten? And it was amazing after you watched the videos. Not one kid ever said, I learned to read, sorry to say that. I learned the letter sound, I learned about numbers. They said, I played, I love going to music, I love going to art, I go with my friends on the playground, all things that they could master and feel successful at. And it was just, to me, because I think in the end, as educators, kids remember what you do with them, the impact you have on those experiences that last a lifetime, rather than discrete skills that we tend to.
I was reading a article, and I can't even remember where it was, like some education thing, and it was all about, you probably have read it, I don't it was about the book Stone Soup, and it was like how, oh my, Boston Public Schools, that's what it was, in their reform. And so they took the book Stone Soup and had all the kids bring
A
in,
vegetable or whatever.
yes. But they wrote about that like it was like a new experience.
Are you kidding me?
One, like they were revitalizing this. And I was like, oh my God, we were making stone soup for 100 years, you know, I mean,
You put a real stone in it,
right, exactly.
in a crock pot.
But those are
Yeah.
the things that everybody remembers.
I agree.
And then I always say to teachers, when you talk about your daughter or whatever, nobody talks about what their letter ID score was or what their CAPS numbers
Right, yeah, no, I
were.
agree.
And so, you know, you have to let go.
So I worked with this woman, I taught with her, Mickey Lowney, she was an amazing educator. She was phenomenal, open-minded, she worked in a multi-age program. Her handwriting might have been as good as yours, it was perfect. She once said to me, we were talking about the kids learning and developmental continuum, she's like, go to every college application, nowhere on there does it ask what grade you started to read.
Right.
She said, so why is it that important
Mhm.
that we're like, they have to read by this point in time? Everybody's different. Everyone will learn to read. And sometimes I believe that kids learn despite us, not because of us.
Oh, that's what I think too.
That we sometimes are the worst enemies.
And we go to the pediatricians and you have 4 kids and I'm sure they all walked at different times, talked at different times, rolled over at different times. So why do we think they're supposed to read it?
Exactly.
And then the whole idea of taking kids that are in preschool, this one makes me crazy, and testing them on phonemic awareness. And, you know, I mean, some kids can't even discern rhyme at that age. Some kids
Your
can't
kids
do
don't
it
walk
in
in to
kindergarten
their
and
name
first
or to
grade.
say their
Yeah.
name, never mind.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, it's just,
But that's, we're setting them up to fail, and we're setting them up
Right.
to shut down as soon as they walk in the door
right.
and not be open to learning. Because if we, as adults, walked into our first class and they said, take this test, I know me, I'd be like, yeah, this is gonna be one long semester right now, because this is the way it's gonna be,
Right.
and I'm checking out already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, the same thing with the stone soup. I mean, I'm older than you guys. I remember making stone soup. I remember making butter.
I used to
I
I thought you shake it.
Yeah,
It's so
shake
much
it,
fun.
shake
Yeah.
it, shake it. I remember the maypole on May Day that we made the maypole.
I'm into that.
But
So when I taught first grade, I was telling Mary, we went to visit a school, I used to bake every week with the kids. And it wasn't really what you were baking, it's the fact that they were measuring, they were learning how to use different utensils and talk about it, and they loved it. And I remember I had a friend of mine who would not eat anything that my kids made in the classroom. So one time I lied to her. I'm like, oh, I need this at home.
no.
But I gave it to her just because I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Because she's like, all the germs. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
save
But
those
but
germs."
also that too, if you stop and think about it, you know, some people like to cook, some people like to bake, but the way society is now, we could have people that nobody really cooks. You know,
Right,
you
you
can buy
microwave,
things, you
right.
microwave things, you heat things up. So kids might never have the opportunity to
finish, right.
see something made from scratch or measuring cups and a teaspoon and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And those
Just
are
like
all
my
so
2-year-old,
important.
every time I'm in the kitchen cooking, like, she gets her little, she has like a
Pulls
little, her own little table and
And she
chairs that.
imitates you, yeah.
And every time she sees me cooking, she's like so curious to the point where she wants to get her chair and she has to sit in her chair
So,
and she has to watch what I'm
Watch.
doing, and she's
My mom used to
asking
do
questions like, what's that? And what are you doing? And like she asks me questions, and it's to the point where I say to myself, is this how they, I'm just asking myself, like, I believe this is really how they learn
Mhm.
how to cook
yeah.
at 2 years old, just by being in the kitchen
Mhm.
watching everything, because you know, even at 2-year-old, they're like sponges and they imitate everything so well. To the point where my 15-year-old could go in the kitchen and make me breakfast and I'll eat it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything's experience.
Like she could make bacon, eggs, like a nice breakfast, and I'm like, oh, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
Her bacon actually comes out better than mine.
Yeah, and there's families that, you know, people will say, oh, my grandmother taught me how to cook this. I mean, I didn't have that
Right.
opportunity, but I
Make
mean,
sauce or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, or,
No
yeah.
parent can do this. Now we are